Okay.
Okay.
So, as the first time to do the Videoconversas or video chatting in English, we have here Riccardo Trallori, an Italian student that's run out from Italy for some days. And so I ask you to do a little presentation.
Okay. Like you said before, my name is Riccardo Trallori. I'm an Italian student. I'm currently 18. At the end of the year, I'll be 19. So the next year, I'm going to study at university. I'm going to study physics in Florence, where I live now. For summer, I'm in England. I think that is my presentation.
Okay, so you live in Florence, right? So your high school was also in Florence. Can you tell us how does that happen? How is your educational system?
Okay, so Florence is a city in Italy. In particular, it's in Tuscany, and it's like the most important city of Tuscany. My high school. It's not exactly in Florence, but it's a little out of Florence, in Trentino, that it's near Florence. My high school, it's called Anna Maria Enrique Sagnoletti, and it's connected with a woman that fought in the Second World War. His name comes from this woman, and also we learned at school her history. So I studied there near Florence, also because was one of the closest high school near me. We can talk about our educational system. Our educational system is a bit different than yours because it's structured in a really different way. So when you finish middle school, you have to choose the high school. Choosing the high school, it's not about choosing the place that is nearer to your home, but it's also about the kind of studies that you are going to do, because each kind of structures has a different kind of studies that are proposed to the students. Like, for example, my high school is a scientific high school, so it's more about scientific subjects, more about physics, sciences. Also, we have informatics in my particular high school. So we can choose between different kind of high school. There is the classical high school, where you study also Latin and Greek, and more about literal subjects or humanistic subjects. So you have to choose between all the different kind of high schools. When you choose an high school, you can also decide to change. Usually people try to not do it. But when you start a high school, the time that you spend on each subject every week usually don't change till the end of the high school. So, for example, if at the beginning of the high school I did the first year 3 hours per week of physics, at all the 5 years I'll do this thing. So you can choose. It's like you choose at the beginning, but not in the middle. Also, it's different because every year you don't have to do exams, but it's only like the teachers takes the marks that you took at every test that you did, and they look at them. If they are more than the sufficient, the least value acceptable, you pass to the next year. If some subjects are not enough good, you have to like do a little exam. It's not considered an exam, but it's like a little a little test, you can say. And you can go to the next year if you pass it. Usually you pass it because it's also made to be not impossible. Um, So the subjects also have a different way to get valuation because in Italy we don't have marks from 1 to 20, but we have only from 1 to 10. So it's a slight difference, but it's not important. And we do only the exam at the end of high school and at the end of middle school, but at the end of the middle school it's not considered really important. At the end of the high school, it's considered important because from the mark that you take from this exam, you will be able or not able to do some jobs. Like there are some jobs where you don't have to take a degree from university, but you have to work for your nation, like doing the working at the post office, and you have to get like a minimum mark at the national exam to do that job. But it's not really an important mark because if you want to study at university, it doesn't count. So to go to university in Italy, you have two possibilities. Or you have to do a test because some universities want you to prove that you are worthy of doing that university. So after the national exam, you do a test that will decide if you will be able to join that university or not. The other possibility is that also some universities that are in a group called natural sciences and physics. I think it's not a good translation, but there are some words that can't be translated in a really good way. That doesn't need a test. So like maths, physics, also biology doesn't need a test because in the end, the only test that they ask you to do, it's a math test that doesn't count. So if you fail it, you are still able to join the university, and you have the possibility to do it multiple times, even if you are still doing the course of the university, the classes of university. So it's a different kind of system. And also high school ends a year later than your usually high school. In fact, you start university when you're usually 19. In my case, I was born in December, so it's so I'm still 18, but I should be 19 this year. So it's a bit different, and we go to school on only in the morning. So at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, depends from the high school. You go home and you study, do your your stuff. Because also in Italy there is a possibility some high school gives you to choose between 5 days or 6 days. So you can do you can go to school for 6 days of week or for 5 days. If you choose 5 days, you have to go home at 2 o'clock. You arrive at 8 o'clock and you go home at 2 o'clock. If you do like I did 6 days, you can go home at 6 o'clock. So it's a little difference. And usually when you choose the high school says that you have or to do 6 days or to do 5 days. And it's changed from the different high school you choose in the end. So I think that there are at the end, the university is also different. I think from yours, I don't know how much it's different because also I learned how it is in England, so it's different. There are differences also from England because university you have to pay in Italy, of course, but you have to pay on how much you earn. So we have a system that understands how much you pay, how much you earn from your job, and says based on how much you earn, we make you pay a fair quantity of money with taxes to do university. So it's something made to make everyone do university. If you are like a bit poor, you don't pay university, and they also try to help you, like giving you a little job at university to let you pay also little things that you probably need in university. Or also there are, of course, some scholarships that helps you to do university.
Here is more about scholarships. That's normally they have been the cost of the fees for university is going down. It's the same for all the public schools. But then our government gives some scholarships based also on that criteria. But if I well remember, you once said you have a project that you have to do on the high school. It's like the word in Italian I forgot. Stagio? No, it's not. It's not a stage. It's
Oh, the stage.
yes. Okay.
So the word in Italian is really it's a bit complex, yes, because they in Italy they like strange words. Like even if I had to talk about it in my exam, I've never learned the complete full name of how it should be called. In Italy, we called it stage. It's not like the correct word, but it's the closest thing. Because the state decided that even if has no meaning, sometimes not in all the cases, we have to do work experiences. So we have like to go in a place where people work and try to do something, because the idea was that we had to learn a job. And this is true for some high schools. Like, for example, my cousin is doing a high school that is teaching him a true job, like working in the fields, and his stages were truly about what he was learning. But my high school is not the same kind of high school. It's a more theoretical one. So it's based on the idea that after high school you're going to study at university. So for me, stages were really different, because we had to do some hours for law to finish high school. Now, because the rules changed every year, it's hard to remember, but now we have to do 100 hours of stages, like we call them, to my theoretical high school. My cousin, that is doing a practical high school, we can say, a technical one, has to do 200. The stages, what are truly? They are experience that you do in a place of work, like you go in a place and you learn something, or try to learn. Sometimes stages are also classes, because some I never know how to express in English this idea, but in Italy we don't have classes on the afternoon, like I said before, but we can do some classes by we can choose to do it. It's not something that is gonna influence your grades at school, but you can choose to do it. Like, for example, you can do classes to get English certifications, and it's really useful. But you can also do stages in the afternoon if you decide that that kind of stage interests you, because also the teachers let you choose some stages, because if you're interested, you will work better. And some of these stages are truly classes. Like one of the last stages that I do was done by the enough, that it's like the the thing,
A company or
it's not like a company because it's like it works for the state and it's the thing that research in physics. I don't know how to say in English that kind of company, but they do research in physics and they did some classes to us. They like told about things about astrophysics in general, about also particle physics. It was really interesting, but it was a class like we do usually at school. So some of these stages are truly classes, and it's a funny thing because it wasn't the original idea. But usually you have to create something at the end. Usually in the classes you have to do a test at the end, or you have like to write an essay at the end to prove that you did something. And also sometimes you have to create something. Like I did another stage. Yes, I did a lot of stages where we studied a microprocessor that was called Arduino. It's like a small computer that you can program, and in the end we tried to do like a little alarm that when you moved it should have like send a signal that says that something passed through that sensor. So it was like we created something. Another time I went to the Common of Florence, where I worked a bit. They explained to us how they kept the information, and they asked us to put in the database other information. So we actually did something that time, and we learned a bit of something that was connected with my studies, because my high school is one of the few that makes you study IT. That it's not really common. I think it's not even really common even there. And for this reason, also there are a lot of kind of stages, because there are more theoretical ones, more practical ones from this point of view. Sometimes also we went to the university, like we did a stage about the synthesis of the paracetamol, because there were the researcher of the university that told us how we could create paracetamol from the ingredients to the process that are usually done to create that substance, and in the end to try to understand if you you obtained what you wanted. So usually the stage is an experience where you learn a bit about the place where you do your stage. Like if you go to a company, usually the first day they try to explain what they do in this company. And later you do or something practical, or you do classes. In the end, you try to do like something. Sometimes also we did a little presentation about what we learned, and we try to show to the people that have taught us till that time, to show that we learned something that they taught us. The important thing of all of this, it's like the problem, of course, for me is that you have to do these things even if you are not really interested, because the government said that you have to do this time of stages, so you are really forced to do these stages even if you are not interested. You can choose to do some of them, but a lot of people choose them not because they're interested on that subject, on that idea, but because they're forced by the fact that to do the national exam you have to do a certain kind of time. And for us that have done theoretical high schools, it's hard because you don't you can't go on a stage where you learn a job because you haven't any practical skills behind you. It's like you know only about the theory. So these jobs usually doesn't help you in that way. The only thing that can help you is for choosing the university. Like one time I went to the University of Florence to like do some classes about maths that were like the first things that you study if you do the course of maths. So this was important, but also it's complex doing the stages because you have to do or in the afternoon because some of them are decided in the afternoon and you have to go in a place in the afternoon using your time, learning things, and the teachers don't care if you do it because in Italy we don't have exams, but we have a lot of tests. So usually, even if a stage is once a week, the next day probably you have classes or tests, and it's a problem sometimes to study to do this test because if you ask the teacher sometimes, I'm sorry teacher, but I have in the afternoon a stage, the teachers don't care. He says you have to study before. So it's a problem for us to do all the things sometimes. Also, some of the stages for me are also worse than doing in the afternoon are during the morning. So if you do in the morning the stage, you lost all the classes of that day. And if you lost a test, you have also to talk to the teacher on when you'll do again that test. So it's also even more complex. Sometimes also you have stages that are not only in the morning but also in the afternoon. So you lose almost the whole day. And this is really hard for a student have to study also the things that was done in class. Like I remember once I did a stage at the University of Florence, another one, and when I came back, there was a physics test, and I had lost like 2 or 3 classes of physics, and physics is not a easy subject. So I was scared for this because even if you study from things that knows your classmates, it's difficult to like learn all these things in a few time because was like at the beginning of the week this test. So every time you do this, it's like you pay a price. The more useful stages are when all your classmates go together with you. But usually teachers try to not do this because they don't want to lose time. Because education in Italy, it's a bit problematic because we have to do a lot of things in not a really widespread of time. So teachers want like to do a lot of things, to teach you a lot of things, and make tests because they also need to have a number of marks that depends from their subjects. So they are also forced by the government to work really hard, work really fast. And this is a problem for us because you are not going to study how to think, but you're going to study informations, only information, and this also can be not really interesting for a student. But
In the fact,
mm, but I think that some of these stages were really important, like for another reason, because even if this is true, what I said is true, but you probably will think, okay, you don't study how to think, and you can learn by yourself. And it's not true for me, but the idea of school should be also create adults, people that are able to think by themselves. But you learn a lot of information, useful things, not because if you study really hard all the year, and with a lot of tests to do, usually at the end of the school, you have like a test every day, you start to forget. You start to forget everything. You sometimes also you have fear of tests. But the stages are a good opportunity to learn something more, because you learn something that the teachers are not able to teach you, not because they don't know it, but because they don't have time. One of the first stages that I did that I think was really important for this reason was a stage that I did in a little company that is in Florence, that was about giving the information of a mayor of Florence that was a really important man here, because he during the Second World War he helped the Jews, and also he became mayor of Florence, helping a lot the population. So, but also he was important in making the Italian Constitution. So, in the end, they talked about all these things, about the Italian Constitution, about things that we don't learn at school, because usually we finish the high school by doing at history the Second World War. So we never learn what happened later. I remember that this year we finished by saying how was defeated Japan, but we didn't do what happened in Germany, in Italy. I know that it was important to learn about the war, but it's also important to know the story of your own nation. And in this case, we learned the principles, the ideas, the values that created our constitution. Things that the new government tried to introduce in the high school, but the things that they change during the years are based on good ideas, because the idea of a stage was a good idea, but they are made like someone that really don't know how it's school. It's like they don't know how it's to be a student, the possibility of schools, and these kind of things in general. So this is probably I talked a bit too much.
No, it's fine. I was thinking that the words for it in English, it's probably internship, no? Here it's estágios in Portuguese. So, but now I was going to ask you something, but before it, just because you're talking about being a student and knowing about that perspective, do you have any student association or something like that in your high school?
Okay, so every high school usually don't have a student association, but it's something a bit particular, because it's like the students in the past thought to have directs, to have power in the school, to talk also with the headmaster about the problems that had school. So we had a not really complex structure. Each class has a representative or two that represent his class. This a little group of students. So, but the whole school have other representatives that are the one that are going to talk with the headmaster if there is a problem. There are also other groups of students that works at a regional level that we elect at the beginning of the school with the school representative and the class representative. So we give to them the power, and they try to do as best as they can in the end. The fact is that usually they don't have a lot of power because they have the possibility to talk with the teachers, with headmaster, and if there is a problem that is with a teacher, they can solve it. The teacher may be angry, but usually we solve it because it's possible to solve these kind of problems. But there are in Italy some problems of the structures. Like my high school had some problems with the heating. Like in winter, sometimes we reached 0 degrees. And for the Italian law, this couldn't be allowed. So we shouldn't reach that temperature. So the representative of the high school talked about it with the headmaster, and the headmaster let the students go home because it was against the law, forcing us to stay at school. But there isn't the money to solve the problem because the headmaster tried to ask for some engineers to solve the problem. But every year the heat system breaks. So we should buy another heat system, but the problem is that there isn't money. Other school has had different kind of problems. Like one of my friends, for a period of time, couldn't go to school because in that school they found a substance that is really toxic. Because it was an old school and some old schools were made with this substance that was really toxic. And they couldn't do a lot about it. They tried to solve the problem, but general our schools had problems. When it rains, my school, there are places that started to be wet and after started to arrive a lot of water. So our structures have problems and the headmasters can solve it because they haven't got the money, even if we ask them and we say them that it's illegal. Because sometimes there are also some rules, some laws that says that something can't be allowed, but if you don't have the money, you have only to accept it in the end. And so this was a little problem. And usually also the politics from our point of view is not really connected with the students. You don't know what the representatives talks about with the regional level. At the regional level. While like what the representatives do in the high school, but sometimes is not really useful. Like I remember last year there were the elections because every year you have to elect another group, and it was a little I don't know how to say it, but it was not a good scene. What I saw, because I saw I spent 5 years in my high school, so I saw a lot of elections, and every candidate proposed himself and his group and his list. Saying what he wanted to do, but every year they want to do things that that are not possible, things that are funny sometimes, but are not really good. Like most of them use them in their election. I think that hasn't, I think, a true translation in English, but it's a way of protesting. In his origin was a way of protesting against the school. Because, like I said before, in the past, students fought against the school because they haven't got any power. There were only the teachers that had the power and they could decide everything that they wanted. The student couldn't say anything. But they used some ways to protest against the school. And now there is still that idea, these ways of like protesting that these representatives want to do, because they know like that the students want to not do school, because if you protest, you don't do school. So sometimes they want to propose these kind of things, and you understand that yes, they want to be representatives, but probably they are not concerned about the school, but about losing days of school. Some of them so want to do this. Also, in the past, these protests were also violent. Sometimes also the police arrived. But nowadays we have also the possibility to not do violent things. But if we talk with the headmaster can give us some days where we don't do classes, but when you can do other kind of things. And some better representatives during these days try to do different kind of classes, like they call people from outside and ask them to do little classes. One of them that I really thought that was important was calling the hospital. Wasn't truly the hospital, but it's associated with the hospital, that came to us and taught us what to do when someone has an accident. So, for example, they told us call the emergency number, but while the emergency number sent you an ambulance, you have to do these things. So you learn a useful skill in your life and things like that. Another time there was one that talked about the conditions of people in jails, or another one that talked about the problem, about the Second World War, of his experience. So also sometimes also about things that in Italian schools are not done but probably should be useful, like sexual education. That may seem funny, people when you talk about it laugh a bit, but it's something that it's a true problem, because if you don't teach these things in school, after you'll have a generation of people with some kind of problems, with children that are born even if they shouldn't be born. So it's you learn some useful things from this kind of thing, but you need someone that is worthy of your vote. And not every time you have this possibility, because also sometimes people want to be representative of the high school just because they like the idea. They have the idea of having the power. So sometimes it's not a good idea. Sometimes they propose funny things that are impossible. Like I'll tell you this one, and later I'll shut up. That this group this year wanted to do like wanted to make us to do like to give marks to our teacher. They wanted us to give marks to our teacher that at the end of the year we'll learn which marks they took. And I believe that this was a funny thing, not really useful in the end. It wasn't our priority. Or other ones that also talked about doing things even if they haven't talked with the headmaster. Uh, and some of them also like did like the politics today, and they started arguing together, and it was really embarrassing for me, because I was like, okay, this is my last year. I would like to have a good representative, and I don't want the guys that arrive this year to think that the representative of this my high school should be like this. But in the end, it was like this.
You were not very happy.
No.
But well, so what about the things you do beyond the school, beyond that internship? Do you have any hobbies? Do you do other activity? Well, we meet at the Astor camp, so you definitely have other activities. If you also can talk us about that, it will be great.
I also talk about the experience of the Astro camp, or also in general the things that I do like hobbies.
Say your hobbies, what you eat. I'm saying it in Portuguese. Sim. I don't know if you noticed that, but it was Portuguese.
No,
Well,
I don't.
yes, but your hobbies, what do you do at home?
Okay.
If you are in any clubs and other activities that you also do, yeah, Industrial Camp feels in that place.
Okay. Uh, so in Italy, there aren't a lot of clubs. This a more American thing because if you stay at school, you can do something, but it's usually there aren't so many clubs. There are some competitions in my school that are competition of volleyball, basketball, and this one I chess. That is one of my hobbies. We made a little chess tournament that I didn't win, unfortunately. This year it wasn't finished because there was the pandemic, but the last year I lose it. so this was one of my hobbies, but at school usually there aren't a lot of clubs. There are these afternoon classes like if you like do something after school, you have to go in other places. Like some of my friends plays some instruments, and they go in particular places where they play the. I don't play any instrument. When I was in middle school, I was forced to learn how to play the flute, and I was really bad at it. So after that, I play any instrument for other people. For other people to not make them feel bad. Um, so, so for this reason, there aren't in general a lot of clubs in school. I do sometimes some classes after school, but also there isn't like a physics club, a math club. From this point of view, there aren't even rooms sometimes to do these kind of things. But in my school, there is a association, these difficult English words. There is this association that it's called Florentine Astronomic Society, I think. Okay, yes. It's an acronym, so it's SAF, that means what I said before, that it's composed by volunteers because they are volunteers. In the end, they are not paid by the association, and they are like working to spread physics to others, like teaching to common people. I don't know how to say in other words, things that are considered in the scientific part of the knowledge. So, I did I go there sometimes to see sometimes they do like some I don't and they're not classes, they are lectures, like some lectures, and I went there to learn what they say. Also, the possibility of stages helped me a lot because I had this interest on physics, so I liked physics a lot, also about astrophysics. So I did all the stages that were connected to it because from my school I couldn't learn a lot because my physics in my high school is taught, but it's limited. So we don't study a lot about astrophysics. I only learn a little bit at high school. So I had to learn in different places. And thanks to these stages, I could learn more than usually a student can learn. So I try to do these kind of things also in sometimes also in other fields, but I tried to do mostly about physics. Usually I read books in my free time, but my classmates usually plays football. I'm not very good at football. I usually play volleyball when there is the possibility in my school's gym, where we do our gym classes, physical education. It's a subject. Okay, and this is during the afternoon. We have to study a lot, so we usually don't have that much free time because in the end there are tests really. I don't know if we can say often, but I say that we are surprised when we haven't got a test per a week. So usually we have a test every week, at least, because we have a lot of oral tests. Um, in this kind of test, you have to call everyone in the group of students. So it's like every week, probably two teachers do oral tests, but you don't know if you will be called to do the oral test or if you will be safe. So it's like we have not so much tests, but you don't know if you will be called. So for you, it's like you will have a test. So you study a lot for this reason. Um, Other things that I do in my free time. Sometimes I go out with my friends. I'm not really interested in art, and it's a bit. It's not really good because I live in Florence, that is really well known for art. So it's a bit of waste, I think. But in the end, I don't try like really a lot discos. So for me, it's not a problem that the Italian government decided to close them down again. Because from Italy we learn this new, and we are a bit scared that they are going to close other things in the near future. Probably they're talking about another lockdown, and we have finished lockdown, so we are not really really happy to think about having another one. um, so mm, Other things.
Maybe Astro Camp now if you want.
Oh yes, sorry. The Astro Camp. The Astro Camp, it's like a camp that I did last year with Pedro. So in 2019 in Portugal. So it was an experience where we had to stay in this place, and we studied. We did some classes about mostly physics and astrophysics, also a bit of particle physics that was really hard. um, and um, There we also did other things, like we did some hikes and other physical activities, like also some games in the end. And I think that it was also a really good experience because everything was really balanced. Because in school, sometimes you have the feeling that you study too much and you are not like practicing other things like your passions, your hobbies. Sometimes you have to shut them down a bit for school. Sometimes you can't do enough sport. So this time I had like the feeling of the right balance between the things, and this was a really good thing because when you feel good, you can also learn more, understand more from this point of view. Also was a good experience because we had the possibility to meet with people from other nations like we're doing right now. And for this reason also was an occasion, a possibility to learn about different cultures, different languages, different ideas. And this was a really important thing because it's not only useful in the scientific field, like me, that I was interested more about, but also from a human point of view. Because sometimes you can think about something from another nation like an alien, like someone that is going to steal your job only, or something like that. But you don't understand that it's someone like you with experience that can be similar to yours, that has feelings like you. So it was an important experience also for learning English from this point of view, because we had to talk all the time in English, unless you were Portuguese. So, because sometimes the Portuguese students were more than us that were foreign students, so they could talk sometimes in their own language. While we came from other nation, we didn't have others talk in our own language, so this was I think that I will always remember. The experience is really it's also open to everyone because in the end you have only to show that you are interested in physics, and you have also to speak in a good way English, because you have to understand other people and you have to be understood. And this is a really important thing because if you're going to do classes also, it's really also hard for you to speak English all the day, to learn things in other languages and talk with people with different accents from yours, because one thing is talking with someone that came from your own language, that do your same mistakes, that speaks with your own accent. Something is different than talking with someone that comes from other nations, from like Sweden, that have a different accent. They haven't got also a Latin language that it's like it's Italian or it's Portuguese, so it's a completely different language. If you don't know how to say something in English, you have problems because you cannot speak, you cannot send a message to the other one. Like if me and Pedro have a problem, we try to speak in our own languages to try to understand if we find a word that in our language is close enough. But this is not always possible. So the application are really easy to do because you have to go only on a website, put your information and a letter that you wrote by yourself, one from your own teacher, because in the end also they want to know something about your teacher and about your grades, something about you, and you can do this application that they will be selected by Carlos, that was the teacher that organized every year the Astrocamp, that choose someone between all the applicants, and later he do an interview with everyone with Skype, like we are doing right now. And in the end he chose like 18 people to go to the Astrocamp. When I did the application, I wasn't sure to be chosen, so I was a bit scared. I wasn't really sure, but in the end happened what it happened. So This experience was also important because Carlos was not only interested about teaching us about physics and about these kind of things, but also about teaching something that it goes beyond some life skills, like telling us the importance of the difference between the perception and reality. The problem of the fact that people don't understand the risk of taking a plane and the difference between the risk of taking a plane or a car, or also about the importance of spreading the scientific knowledge, that it's an important thing that we understood better in this way, and that we will try to do as we will grow up and we will talk with other people of also our own age, because it's also an important thing that we have to do in our lives. But also we learn about the problems such as the problem of light pollution, that is a problem of nowadays, or also the problems of sending the satellites in the atmosphere, because the old satellites has broken and now there are pieces of them all around the earth, and probably in the future will be more difficult to send other satellites. So these are all problems that are not really told at school, or in general you can learn only if you search them, if you have an interest about them. And it's really useful that someone teach you about these things. Also, Carlos tried to shows us the problems of the renewable energies, because we always say, okay, we don't need to use fossil energies, but it's possible to use all renewable energies, all solar panels or windmills or things like that. And Carlos tried to answer to this question using other ideas taken from other scientists, from also documentaries and programs. So he tried to give us a better knowledge also about the world we are living. So I think that it's a good experience that everyone who has an interest in these subjects should try.
Well, you talked about meeting people from other cultures, other countries. So, what do you think that differentiates Italy from the other countries?
Okay, so difference between Italy and other countries are, I think, less than we expect. So in the end, when I went at the Astro Camp, I know that people came from other cultures. There were someone that ate pizza with pineapple. That is considered a sin here. Um, in the end, there weren't so much differences, because like if we talk about probably older people, we can feel better the difference. But we are grown up in a different age now. The world is globalizing now. It's already a global world, and even if we are growing in our own nation and we learn about our own culture, we also feel the influence of other countries. And sometimes it's also difficult to understand when something is from another country from your own country. So also internet helps this a lot. You learn things from other countries, but in this way they also influence you. And this is not a necessarily bad thing. It's also useful to understand that other people have something in common with you. It's also important to keep and to preserve your own culture from this point of view, because is something that made you richer from this point of view. But except from the culture, except also from the places where we were born, where we grew up, because also there are differences in the architecture, in the places, but from a really cultural point of view, the difference it's made probably mostly on history, because in the end we think in a really similar way, change a bit from the way of studying that we had, because also we studied in different places, so with different kind of school systems. But I haven't found that have really different. Probably from the northern countries, we are more open, we are more likely to talk, but this doesn't differentiate Italians from Portuguese so much, or from Spanish people so much, because in the end we are like in the same cultural area. Like sometimes I feel more differences in a cultural way with a French or than with a Portuguese or a Spanish guy, because in the end we came from a really close area where we have a lot of contacts. We have also to remember that Italy in the past was conquered by almost all the nations in Europe. So we have something that came from a lot of different cultures. But in the end, I think that the differences can be found mostly in the language or in the ancient ideas, like also there was a girl that arrived in my school that was from that lived for a while in Spain, and so she was Spanish, and she told us about things that she said this is sexist idea that there is also in Spain. And these were ideas that also are wrong from this point of view, but are diffused also in this nation, because we came from also a similar culture. And even if these ideas were wrong, are the proof that we are not really distant, really different, so different, and we think. There are cultural differences, yes, but if you don't think about language, if you speak only in English and you don't like look at how someone looks, it's not really easy to understand where you came from. And this was my impression.
Do you think that there are past events in Italy that can describe better the country, people that live it or still lives? And do you think that the truth is in the Second War also you had a fascist government? Do you think that's also an heritage you still feel today?
Okay, so yes, the Second World War was an important event in Italian history, because it also was an important point in the development of our country, because before of the Second World War and the fascist period, we had a monarchy, we had a king and a queen. But after the war, after the fascist went away, we became a republic, because we decided with a referendum that we couldn't have no more a king. So this was certainly an important turning point. Also, it was an important experience having a dictatorship that controlled the population, and showed us how was to have no freedom, no possibility to express your own ideas. You had no freedom of press, freedom of exposing your ideas, freedom of thinking. The state tried to control all the nation, and also tried to control all the economy. in a fun thing because probably they inspired from the Soviet Union, and the fascists were against the Soviet Union, but they took some ideas from them. So I always found the fascists really funny for this because they only wanted to take the power, to take control. They hadn't even a really idea. They were they tried to use everything to keep the power and control people. They weren't sure about something. And this was also something that shows us how they wasn't really good at these kind of things. And the fascists at the end were defeated, but some of them are still here. So the fascists there are still today. Still, someone says that the dictator Mussolini did something good. So there are someone who still thinks that was better a dictatorship because also they believe in these kind of ideas. They're not like truly a lot, but some kind of these ideas I think they are still alive. Not they are not. Some of them call themselves fascists, neo-fascists. That means some of them, some of these ideas are alive in other people, but they don't call themselves fascists. Only if you call them fascists, you are attacking them. Also because there is this idea of fearing the others, because we studied in a really good way the fascist period at school, also because it was a dark period for Italy, and we also need to understand how it's Italy, because also Mussolini wanted to conquer some places in Africa, some colonies, because Italy didn't have a lot, had something, but it wasn't really important, really useful for us. So he wanted to attack other part of Africa to gain other colonies. So he, for the first time, introduced the Rexist idea. All Hitler fault, because sometimes in Italy we say, okay, yes, but Mussolini decided to kill the Jews only because there was Hitler. No, because in the end he hasn't done Rexist laws until he decided to until Hitler did. We did these laws later, but these Rexist ideas were also spread by this. This also was a problem of Italy. There is still today. Mussolini, in the end, hadn't solved a lot of problems in Italy, because he tried to improve the economy. At least we can say that he tried. He didn't have so much success, and one of the biggest success was of an action that was decided by the previous government. So was something really funny. But in the end, this period led a lot of changes in our society, because, for example, the constitution was written basing on the ideas that were opposite to fascism, because it's like we decided to stay away from these ideas, to try to from this point of view, not to make the fascist happens again. Sorry. And for this reason, also our society was tried to made about these ideas, and there is between the people a hate against the fascist ideas. But there is also a part of population that agrees with the fascist ideas. And this is usually part of the new generation, so us and the younger ones, because they don't believe in what happened in the Second World War. So they say that something is invented, something, yes, it's true, but it was not like that. They try to think like that. They can be easily attacked and you can be easily defeat them with the use of reason. But the problem is that not everyone has the knowledge to say no, you are wrong, and not everyone wants to do it. Some of them only try to use these ideas to feel safe, to feel like it's to feel like the with a dictatorship I feel safe. I feel that I don't have any problem. The state will do it for me. Like if I don't have to choose, it's easier to way. It's easier to live my life with no problem, with no fear of the future. But they also don't think about the fact that even if we attacked other countries, so other population, and we were bad against also the Jews, the people that we sent in the lagers, the fascists attacked the Italians also. So, we know that the fascism was bad also for us, but this kind of people don't think about this kind of things. And this
But the truth is that now you have a major political party that has the fascist ideology as its basis, the League. And so, how do you see it surging and what is the involvement of the young people in it?
Okay, so to talk about politics, we have to say, I think, before. So, Italian politics is complex because a lot of time now we don't have, like, for example, the left, a good left, for example. We have only middle and right power. So it's also a particular political condition. But also, you don't have like a stable political condition because people don't have trust in a political party, don't have enough trust in a political parties. Like there aren't two main parties that are fighting each other, that express the main ideas, the main problems that we are talking about, and people just have to say, no, I think that this party is better. We have lots of parties. And for this reason, also, they have problems to create a good government that makes people happy because if they have to do alliances to create a government. And the League, it's one of them. The League has some of these fascist ideas, but it's a party that now it's a bit old. It's a bit it's not even a serious party for me because for one reason, because the league time ago was called the League North. It was based on the idea of taking the votes of northern Italy, because Italy, for since his foundation in the 18th century, was divided from north to south because the north was the industrial part, while the southern part was more based on agriculture. But the northern part was the richer part. Also, a lot of governments tried to improve the north and his economy because it was considered the most important part of the nation, and the southern was like considered something that was like slowing down the north. So the league started by saying that we should divide from north from south of Italy because the south was worse. So they based their politics at the beginning of this, and even if you can consider it a bad idea, and you can say that it's better to keep a nation unite, you can say that was an idea. But later they came back they decided to change their mind. They changed the name, Just League, and they started to also tried to focus on the problem of the immigrants. So they wanted to take the votes from also the southern part of Italy. So they, in the end, changed their main ideas. And this, I think, that is not a really good thing because, okay, I can understand changing something small like an idea, a proposal, or something, but changing the main idea of your party is not something that you can see as something that of a party that you can trust, from my point of view. So the league based their politics about the fear of people against immigrants. So they also tried to do as they can, like Salvini became sadly famous, I think, around Europe because he tried to stop every ship that arrived in Italy, also by doing this. Killing people or made them trying to arrive in different places because it was a right idea. What we said that we couldn't keep all the immigrants in Italy. It was not wrong. But also Salvini said that we couldn't make them arrive in Italy. And this is a basically wrong idea for one reason, because immigrants has always arrived in Italy, even with different politics, with different governments that had also an important success about immigrants, because it's not like it's a problem of today. It's a problem that spreads from years. So other governments had better results also because during these years are arriving less immigrants, not for Salvini's ideas, but only because this process is slowing down. So Salvini hasn't got even some good ideas to say them. He only made these people become criminals because if you want to go somewhere, you will go there because it's always possible to do something in an illegal way. So they arrive in Italy, but they don't have any kind of they don't exist in Italy. So they don't have any documents, any passport, nothing. They can't legally. So this is a problem because they are hungry. They have to eat. They have to live. And if you don't have nothing, you start to steal. It's not something that I don't want to say that they steal because they are evil. They steal because they are hungry, because they can't work. They would like to work, but they can't because Salvini made them become criminals because he said you can't arrive here to stay in your home. And now um, there are also some how we can say it. Uh, Probably it's not the best word to say it, but it gives the idea. Lager. It's think about the English word for lager, because there are some these places like that in the north of Africa to stop the immigrants for these politics that are paid also from us to keep the immigrants there, and these places are against the human directs that we agreed. And for this reason, there is also this problem because it's it's a problem. The problem of immigrants. It's not wrong, but these people are kept there in really bad conditions. So we have also to think about a way of solving the problem in another, in a like humanitarian way. You can say, like what I'm trying to say is that okay, there is a problem, but this way isn't solving the problem. And Salvini tried to do this, but he tried also in the way he did all these things, he also tried to gain the attention of the population, like he tried to be liked by people. And we can see it also by during the pandemic because his success was based on this idea of immigrants. And during the pandemic, he started to not be followed by a lot of people because he wasn't necessary. And other people, more important, during the pandemic, started to take his place. And now also the league is weaker for this reason because now Salvini lost part of his position, we can say. Before the pandemic, he was more important. Sorry.
He was in the government. But well,
Yes.
what do you think that the young people are doing there about that? If they are involved in politics or not?
They are not involved in politics, but there are many reasons. Some of them I don't know, probably because it's something really complex. You can say why people follow someone, but it's difficult to say why they don't follow someone. Um, we can say that a problem of Italy is that the population is composed mostly by old people. I followed a YouTuber in Italy that shows some statistics about Italian population, and he represented the condition of the Italian elections that said that Italians, even if all the young people voted a party, it wouldn't be elected if all people decided that they don't want it. For this reason, also young people are not really interested in politics. Politics, it doesn't seem interesting. He seems like something that is only doing wrong things. They don't solve problems. They have just they usually people only complains about politics. Some of them has some ideas, but even from one year to another, these people can change their ideas because the parties are not really stable. They change their minds, they say something and they do the opposite. So the politics is not really stable. There are not like really big parties. So these are big parties, but they're not enough big to be like something like in the past. There was like I'm talking more past the Christian democracy. There was that was a strong party. There was also the Socialist Party, that was another strong party that people could decide they could descend if the party was going to do something that they liked or not, and they could choose between only a few parties in the end. But now there are a lot of them that changed ideas, that something that people like. So, and youngers are started to become not really interested in politics, and this is not a good thing. I know but it just doesn't seem interesting. Some are interested. Also, the school doesn't, for example, encourage you. Like sometimes we try to talk about politics, but also how it's made the school system. Sometimes we talked about politics, and talking some of that way could have helped us because some high schools that are in the same building of my high school, because my building there are more than one high school course, they politics in a subject that it's called it's about studying the laws. So they can talk more about politics, but only a few of them, only a few of high schools talks about these kind of subjects. And for this reason, you have also less ability to understand, because if you don't study this kind of stuff, you understand really lower. I understood that to learn about politics, sometimes internet is more important, is more useful, because people express their ideas and they say like, I like Europe because I don't like Europe, because I like Salvini because I don't like Salvini, because, and it's a good thing, but it's also dangerous for in some ways, because with internet you can have an opinion by looking at the different opinions. But if you have already an opinion and you go on internet, you will only grow your idea, because you only follow the people that says the same thing, and you can become a radical from this point of view. And this also is another thing that can happen. I don't know if this was the answer that you wanted to hear.
No, the answer is yours. But well, to let politics here a little apart and going for the Italian culture, I love Italian, the language, and so I don't know if you can talk about it. What do you want to say? Some special things, some curiosities, and also some popular expressions, if you can.
Okay, okay. So, like I said before, Italy was attacked by many nations, but for a long time it was also divided. This made Italian a really particular language, because like during the Roman Empire there was only the Italian, and it was like spread in all the nation. But after the Roman Empire, Italy has been divided for all his own history until their unification. So, especially near the unification, there were a lot of different nations. Like, for example, the region where I live was a nation. And a lot of different regions had their own nation. This made the difference between the different parts of Italy became stronger and stronger. So also the language, because every nation started to have about his own language, and they started to become really different. So we have a lot of different dialects, and funny thing is that even in the same region, sometimes we have different dialects. The dialects on places that are near together are not really different. They change the way of sometimes they construct their sentence, like sometimes some dialects use some structures that can be considered a grammar mistake in Italian. Especially in almost all of Italy, because there is only one dialect that is considered Italian, that is the closest one to be considered Italian, and it's mine, because Italian was based on a book that was written by an Italian writer, was called Manzoni, that decided to write this book that was probably the first book in Italian culture, because before there were books, but they were mostly Latin. After there were some literary productions that were more in dialect, but this was considered like the first book, with first truly book, and this was the book that decided the language, the Italian language, and it was written in my dialect. So this was like the decision of making the Italian language with my dialect. So my dialect is the closest thing to Italian. So my dialect, usually we don't make a lot of grammar mistakes, because the Italian was based on our ideas, while other parts of Italy makes more mistakes on their dialects because their language was more different. So also in the same region, we can have different dialects, also because before of having nations that were defined by a region, also even cities fought one against each other. So even in the same region, we can have different way of expression. So the Southern has a different, a really hard language to understand for us if they talk in dialect, because usually they learn also Italian. And the language in the Southern is really different from ours, because they change a lot of things. Also, we have two islands. One is Sicily. The other one is, I don't know how it's called in English, so I'll call it in Italian, Sardinia. They studied their own dialect, and we discovered that can be considered a language. So it's not like Italian, it's not like a language, a little difference between Italian, but it can be considered like a known language with all his own rules. But people there know how to speak Italian, and in all Italy people know how to speak it, but they also know usually their own dialect, because also it's part of your own culture. So we can understand in my part of Italy that is between it's a place that is near the center, but a bit in the north part of the center. So we can understand usually better the northern dialects, but if they talk only in dialect, we can't understand them, because they became harder and harder. A funny thing is that in Italy, we have to study Italian, like every nation has to study in his schools his languages. But most of the teachers now came from the southern part of Italy. So our Italian teacher came from the southern part of Italy. And and a lot of our teachers came from the southern part of Italy, and when they get angry, they started to speak in their own dialect. And sometimes we can't understand what they are saying when they get angry. It's like, okay, I understand you're angry, but I don't understand what you said, because here we are in Florence. This is Italian and not what you are saying. So, and the funny thing is that we usually make less grammar mistakes than them, and sometimes when they get angry, they do some grammar mistakes that we don't do. So it's like we think we teach them Italian. We should teach them Italian. It's our duty to teach right Italian. Also, we have not only got different words in the different dialects, but also different way of pronouncing everything. Like in my dialect, the most important differences are not the different words, but the way of pronouncing the C. Because in Florence we don't pronounce a lot the C. We usually pronounce really not a lot the C. And it's a typical thing of Florence. And for this reason, we have like sentence that is really well known because it's a sentence that keeps a lot of C's inside of it. And when you meet someone that is Italian from another part of it, they understand that you are from Florence, and usually they get it because our accent is still is not strong, but it's enough to be caught by other Italians, and they ask to say this sentence that is Coca-Cola con la cannuccia corta. And it's this sentence in strictly Florentine probably will be said Coca-Cola where you like replace the C with the H, the Italian H, of course. And it's like having no sound with the C. And sometimes, and this is our peculiarity. I found some other Italians from another part of Italy, from Reggio, that weren't able to speak properly with accents. And so for this reason, we made jokes about the accents to have a meaning. Because in our language, the accents are not written usually, but are implicit in the word. And for this reason, the accent sometimes you have to know where to put it, and sometimes change the meaning of the sentence. There are only a few words, but there are that without the accent means a different thing. Like for example, peach in Italian, if you if you put in a wrong way, the accent means fishing. So it's something that it's fun because you find someone that use different words than yours. Sometimes you don't even know what the word means because you understand that the word is Italian, or you can also not understand that this word is Italian, and so you just don't understand because dialect can be really different. And I think that it's a bit of curiosity about the Italian language. If you want, I can say something in Italian.
Go ahead.
What do you want me to say?
What do you prefer? Maybe some popular expressions.
Okay. So this one is typical of Florence. It's it's our dialect, so it's a typical sentence. We don't have a lot of things of typical expressions. So it's the thing that I want. I'll say. It means what are you saying? Like if you say something strange that has no meaning because or things like that. It's this thing is because it's not Italian, so it's dialect. Okay, it's mai che tu dici, and like in Italian will be ma cosa stai dicendo, because I che it's dialect, and I'm not the best one to talk about in dialect. My cousin is better talking in dialect than me because where he lives, he speaks more in dialect than where I live. because also they are in the countryside, and in the countryside there is less contamination than where I live, where there are also a lot of people that are still Italians because they grew up here and things like that, but came from other nations sometimes. So this made the language a bit more contaminated by this thing, and the dialect is less strong from this point of view. And other things, I don't know. Um, let's think a little bit. So we use a lot of bad words, like we can say. Yeah, it's like we use sometimes to say hello, we say ciao. That it's closer to a word that you have in your language, but I think that it's your own word is like to say goodbye. Our is to say also is also to start a conversation. Also, I don't know more things that says more young people like Bella Fra. It's like has almost the same meaning of hello, but it's different kind of words. Like Bella, it means good. Fra, it's like the abbreviation of brother in Italian. Like sometimes we take words from English and use them, but not that much in the end. Don't think. Um,
We also steal a lot of expressions from English, don't worry. We still do it. Well, so we have 1 hour and 40 minutes, so I think
okay.
that's already
Yes.
good. So thank you for accepting the invitation. I'm just going to stop the recording.
Okay.